Hi, we are the team number 4 and we are going to talk about the Vietnam War. The team members are Guillermo Leal, Yanni Quintero, Samantha Ibarra, and me, Paola Enriquez. We chose this topic because we found it the most interesting of all the topics, and we also wanted to know the point of view of someone who lived the war and understand why he feels like that. Vietnam War was a conflict between the communist government of North Vietnam against the government of South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The war was also part of a large regional conflict and a manifestation of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Um, for final result, we want to interview where the person being interviewed shares all of his side of the story and the way he lived the war in order for our audience to connect with the person and generate empathy.
America had given France more than $2 billion to stop the communist-led Viet Minh in Indochina. But in 1954, after 8 years of war and 100 years of colonial rule, the French were defeated. The Geneva ceasefire agreement imposed a temporary division of Vietnam. The French could retain their influence in the south. A communist regime, headed by Ho Chi Minh, took over the north. To many Vietnamese, the Viet Minh were nationalist heroes, finally victorious in the long war against the French, finally in control of their capital city, Hanoi. To America's leaders, Ho Chi Minh represented international communism directed by Moscow. And after China's fall to the communists only 5 years before, they saw Ho's victory as another threat to the West.
I saw everywhere that there were people who were frightened and worried at the evidence, either in their own country or in very close proximity to it, of aggressive Chinese communist intentions. It would seem as though it was quite possible that the Chinese communists are not content to stop until it is apparent that they are stopped by superior resistance.
In the South, American hopes for building an anti-communist state centered on Ngo Dinh Diem, a little-known nationalist appointed prime minister during the Geneva Conference. Diem had disliked French rule. Now he was inheriting their shaky bureaucracy, a demoralized army, and a capital, Saigon, seething with fierce political rivalries. He also faced a 2-year deadline. The Geneva Agreements called for countrywide elections in 1956. If Ho Chi Minh won, the communists would control all of Vietnam. The Eisenhower administration was uncertain about Diem. Could he rally the southern population and stop the spread of communism?
Hi, Ruben Jacobo. So, you're a Vietnam veteran. We're going to ask you some questions about your experience during the war. It's okay?
Anything.
In your opinion, what was the main conflict of the war?
There was a big conflict going on for quite a few years at that place during the French occupation, and then the French were getting defeated, and the United States entered the war to stop communism. So they say.
In what troop were you?
Okay, I was assigned to after arriving. I was assigned to a unit in field artillery out of Phu Loy, Vietnam. It was a large installation, and I spent a few weeks, very short time, maybe a month, and from there I got reassigned up into the Central Highlands, into the mountains in Vietnam. The Central Highlands is and I spent most of my time there.
Had you lived in the United States when they sent you to fight?
Actually, I joined the army in July 8th, 1968, and I was lucky enough to be stationed here at home, where most of the soldiers went to the war zone, and I actually volunteered to go to Germany, and I ended up going to Vietnam. So I had applied for both, so I went to Vietnam at a very young age. I was very young, maybe like 19, 20 years old, huh, Carmen?
When you went in, you
Yeah.
were probably 18 or 19.
I think back, I was 18 or 19, right around that.
How old were you when you went to fight?
19 years old. One night.
And do you remember what was the first thing you did when you arrived?
I remember a lot of things, but it's kind of like to enumerate and especially say like one of the so many things happened, and it's kind of hard to just pick one. But yeah, we the thing that sticks in my mind, it was a completely different world. Like we're in the jungle, so there's a lot of rain and a lot of mud, and you go a lot of times without sleeping, and you work long hours, and it's more than a job, because we work like during the day, and all of us at nighttime we had to do 6 hours guard duty. So you suffer quite a bit. There was hardly any rest, and it was constant. Uh, you have to be very vigilante. Always be alert and stay on your toes. And it's kind of hard because you don't sleep very much, and sometimes you can go without sleeping for days, and you have to protect yourself against the enemy, and you're young, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a whole different world.
In what life conditions you were living in that time?
Life conditions were, it was actually in a secluded place, and we had a cook, and we get hot meals. But we're lucky to have hot meals there. But we slept under very extreme conditions. Like we slept on they call them bushes. Like you make up your own sleeping area with sandbags, and of course you have your weapons ready at all times, and you share your room with, not room, but your space with another soldier, and it was a lot of lack of sleep, and you actually lose a lot of weight. You sweat a lot, because the weather was extreme, very much like in Sinaloa or Nayarit, where it's so hot, but it rains a lot, so you're confined to a space. You have very little contact with somebody else. At that time, we'd have cell phones if we speak like this. But a lot of work and a lot of suffering. You see a lot of stuff going on. You hear a lot of stories. You see a lot of things. And you get attacked by the enemy, and you had fire missions like on a daily basis. And I was stationed in a field artillery, a very small place with very big guns, and it was all fire missions against the enemy. We're real near the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was the main route of transport for the enemy, bringing all these armaments and soldiers and supplies to the our enemies, you can say, because we had to be on the lookout. You actually didn't fight a lot against uniformed soldiers. You had the guerrilla fighters. There was guerrilla fighters.
And can you describe your feelings during the fight?
You're young, and you spend a lot of time with your buddies, and you seeing all these things developing, and at first you start like writing down the events and the number of deaths, or all these stories. But as you spend time in the country, you learn that you don't want to write down stuff, because you can become a prisoner, which I did later. But you learn not to write stuff down, except letters going home, and you expect letters from home, but you spend a lot of time with your buddies. Like a girl there, you always have somebody there they have all these stories from home, and you're always wishing to talk to somebody. You're missing the food. You're missing your girlfriend or wife. There's all this conflict going on. People are pretty wild, like we're all young, so you see all kind of situations, kind of hard to describe, and it happened so long ago too. But the main concern is survival, is to survive and come home. You know, you kind of like you kind of uh, go. Your main thought is to be there tomorrow morning. So you have a calendar, like usually like a Playboy calendar, and you mark every day, every day, every day, and every day that you woke up, it was an accomplishment. Uh,
How long you were away from your family while the war was? Like, how long you were fighting?
I actually spent like 11 months in the war zone. 11 months. They let me come home a month earlier. And I served in Vietnam at the very end of my time. They call it tour.
Wow.
Yeah, but I didn't want to go back. One time I had to leave the combat zone because it was too stressful. You're a lot of stuff going through your mind, and so I asked the chaplain. You know what a chaplain is, like a priest, and I asked him. I got to get out of here because I couldn't stand it anymore. Because you see people go crazy, losing their mind, or acting stupid, or you see people killing your own buddies, or you fight against the enemy. And my deal was I wanted to come home, and I wanted to live, and I wanted to survive, and that's the main goal. But war is not just the enemy; it's all your surroundings, all that noise, but that's pretty. You work with a lot of characters, and I don't know. I was too young really to understand all the reasons why this and that. But when you put in a situation, then you start like knowing that you have to survive. It's just like your plan is to go home and
Now, what was your contribution during the war?
in a field theory is to destroy the enemy. Their route, their supplies, like when they have a mission, there was people that go out and check it out, and they come back and say, "Well, today we killed 18, and we captured so many tons of rice and so many guns, but there's so many soldiers fighting that it doesn't matter." I'm glad you asked on that because when you're in a war zone, you get body count, they call it, and today, we kill so many, and it just goes on. That a tremendous number of people dying. Yes, tremendous number of people dying.
What do you think about the Vietnamese enemy?
I never had a problem with the how can you say enemy, the Vietnamese. It's kind of hard to tell because you can't trust anybody, and you never know who the enemy is a lot of times. And so sometimes you're put in a situation where you almost have to kill somebody, but you realize it was not a life and death situation, and you have to choose somebody. So but you have to very quick decide. You have to decide things like that.
How do you think the Vietnamese army saw the U.S. Army?
They treat me well. They kind of like you stay with your Americans with the Americans. The Australians with the Australians, the Koreans with the Koreans, and you stay with a group. You're always with a small group, 3 or 4 guys that you can trust, and you're there to save their life, and they take you, and that happens a lot. You become very close, just like you two. You become very, very close.
Okay. How was the economy of the United States during the fight?
You get all the food and board, and that.
I think in general, she's asking what was the economy like in the United States.
I like to say something. I was very young. I was 18, 19, and I live in Sinaloa. I was born in Agualato, so I was like, when I left your country, I was only like 13, 14. So I didn't have I couldn't cope with the learning because I was so new to the country. I didn't know the politics or the economy. I got to school very little. I had to, it's a whole bunch of adjustments. I don't know. But
Your opinion about this war?
Well, I kind of like always wanted to be a soldier, so I was prepared for, and I was young, and I came from a good background with my family, this and that, and I didn't have no habits, bad habits, stuff like that. So I just tried to uh, learn things and just be a good man, and do something uh, beneficial for everybody, and just survive and grow and gain life experiences and go on. I still do that.
Thanks a lot for your time to
Okay,
answer all these questions.
I thank you very much.
In our opinion, we think that it was really interesting to interview someone that lived the war because it made us realize how the war was in another way, in another point of view. Without the books and all the history facts, it was more like to hear a personal experience of someone. Actually, it is what it was.
Also, we analyzed how someone that was almost our age really were in the war, and he said that the only thing he wanted in that moment was to be free and live his life like what everyone and in that age wanted really hard.
The first question is, what is the reason why it started?
La razón por la cual comienza es por los diferentes intereses económicos y políticos que había en el país. Recordemos que el país estaba dividido en Vietnam del Sur y Vietnam del Norte, una liderada por el capitalismo de Estados Unidos y la otra liderada por el socialismo de la Unión Soviética.
So, what is the conflict?
El conflicto que existía era una inconformidad por parte de la zona geopolítica que Vietnam fuera, en la cual pues estaban los intereses de Occidente por Estados Unidos y de Oriente por la Unión Soviética y China, que ya venía figurando como una potencia.
Okay, so what are the causes?
Las causas principales en esta eran dos. Primero, recordemos que Vietnam está ubicado en Medio Oriente, donde es la zona más rica en petróleo. El número dos es porque tanto Estados Unidos como la Unión Soviética querían tener el poder completo de dicho país, tratar de unificarlo.
Okay, so what are the consequences?
Los consecuencias que se tuvieron fue pérdidas de muchos miles de personas y así como también la derrota de Estados Unidos y el triunfo de Vietnam del Norte, liderada por la Unión Soviética.
Okay, so when it started?
Desde el año 1955 ya venían sucediendo diferentes tipos de conflictos entre ambas ideologías, pero no fue hasta el año de 1970 cuando ya se tuvo un auge totalmente por las armas entre las dos ideologías, que era la Unión Soviética con el socialismo y Estados Unidos con el capitalismo.
So, when did it end?
Se dice que la fecha en la que termina fue en el año de 1973, con el triunfo de Vietnam del Norte, liderado por la Unión Soviética, en este caso la Unión de Repúblicas Socialistas Soviéticas.
Okay, so what was the quality of life of the soldiers?
La calidad de vida de los soldados era precaria, carecían de alimentos.
Okay, what was the relation between the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union?
Estados Unidos apoyaba a Vietnam del Sur y su ideología era el capitalismo. La Unión Soviética apoyaba a Vietnam del Norte y su ideología del socialismo. Gran Bretaña jugaba un papel para beneficio de Vietnam del Sur con Estados Unidos. Entonces, pudiéramos pretender decir que Estados Unidos y Gran Bretaña, a grandes rasgos, manifestaban algunos intereses a favor del capitalismo, mientras que la Unión Soviética, también apoyada por China, favorecía lo que es el socialismo.
What was the Vietnam War's main point?
Okay. Vietnam está situada en una región que juega un nivel geopolítico muy importante para las grandes potencias mundiales. Recordemos que está ubicada en Medio Oriente y Medio Oriente es la zona rica en petróleo. Entonces, cualquiera de las dos potencias, por un lado la socialista o la URSS o en Rusia hoy en día, y por el otro lado el capitalismo liderado por Estados Unidos, en gran medida pudiéramos definir que se tiene una superpotencia.
What was the Vietnam War like to realize?
A nivel mundial, esta guerra fue televisada porque tanto Estados Unidos como la URSS querían demostrar su influencia política y económica contra los demás países. Definir que en el planeta solamente existían dos bandos, el capitalista y el socialista. Por lo tanto, cualquiera de los dos que ganara en Vietnam iba a adquirir una gran influencia política, militar y
What did the U.S. participate?
Estados Unidos participa porque siempre ha pretendido ser la policía mundial. Donde un país requiera petróleo, ahí va a estar Estados Unidos. Donde un país tenga petróleo y no sepa manejarlo, ahí va a estar Estados Unidos. Y donde se vean influenciados los intereses económicos de Estados Unidos, también va a tener presencia en ese lugar.
How many people died?
Últimamente se dice que fueron
Okay, so the last question: who won the Vietnam War?
el bloque ganador fue el soviético, en este caso Vietnam del Norte, derrotando a Vietnam del Sur y demostrando que su ideología era mejor, se tenía mejores resultados, por lo tanto se lograba comunicar una mejor economía.
Okay, so here we are with the ultimate round, and we're going to ask you some questions about the Vietnam War. Okay, in this interview, we'll learn more about the conflict between the United States and Vietnam. Vietnam had two sides, the North and South Vietnam. The main conflict was that pitted the communist government of North Vietnam against South Vietnam and its principal ally, United States, and then it intensified after the Cold War.
We also learned that the Vietnam War was the first televised war. This war was televised because the United States wanted to have their power upon the other countries and to provoke.
In conclusion, this war could have been an important event, even if it had been avoided if the United States has not intervened. We know that the North Vietnam would easily win the war without US support from the South Vietnam. But we also believe that it is a fact that completely changed the United States. United because that defeat meant a great hit on its population, which had the image of an invulnerable and powerful nation. When their people learned of the defeat, they destroyed their leaders because they had given the other information about the war.